Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted by the federal government, 11 counts, wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, and according to the Department of Justice, more than $3 million were funneled to people embedded with the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazi groups. Let's watch what Karoline Leavitt said.
Saw the indictment yesterday. I saw the acting attorney general and FBI director do a press conference on it. It was quite shocking to me to learn of the egregious violations of the law the Southern Poverty Law Center was committing. And I think that's a story that should be on the front page of every newspaper in this country because they've obviously been duping their supporters and the American taxpayers for far too long. It's a criminal organization, clearly, and that's not our DOJ saying that or Todd Blanc saying that. That's a grand jury indictment saying.
I agree with her. It should be front page news everywhere across the country. You just heard from White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. Now let's hear from the FBI Director Kash Patel on the investigation.
Lie. The charity that supposedly fought the Klan funded the Klan. The charity that supposedly fought neo-Nazis funded neo-Nazis. The Southern Poverty Law Center ran a methodical, calculated scheme to defraud their donor base of $3 million and lied to them and used an illicit banking structure system to create shell companies to hide their money and who it was being sent to, specifically for the reason to sow discord and hate into our society. This is the ultimate definition of hypocrisy. And if you look at the indictment produced by the Department of Justice and the FBI, you will see that these banking institutions tie directly the funding mechanisms in which the Southern Poverty Law Center used to fund at least 8 hate groups they supposedly wanted to take out, but they were paying the very villains of our society they supposedly wanted to protect us from. That's the ultimate hypocrisy.
For years, Tea Party Patriots Action has been attacked by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now we know the Southern Poverty Law Center was actually a criminal enterprise. We're going to come back to this story in depth later in the show with Washington Examiner commentary editor Conn Carroll. But first, let me welcome you to the Jenny Beth Show. I'm Jenny Beth Martin, and I'm headed to Arizona tonight for 2 Pass the Save America Act rallies. Scott Pressler and I will be in Scottsdale, Arizona not tomorrow, but Saturday. And then on Sunday, we'll be in Tucson. If you're in Arizona, go to events.teapartypatriots.org for details to join us. And if you're in Alaska, we hope to see you at our rallies there next weekend. I'm honored to introduce a state senator who's been doing the work that Washington, D.C. refuses to do. Senator Greg Blanc of South Dakota is with us right now. He is an ordained pastor, a police chaplain, and a state senator. South Dakota is lucky to have him. Senator Greg Blanc, welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Wow, that is an incredible introduction. Thank you for your kindness, and thank you, Jenny Beth, for allowing me to be on your program.
Well, I'm just so excited to have you on. I met you a few weeks ago in South Dakota, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first, let me ask you this: would you please give our audience a background about who you are, your background as a pastor, as a police chaplain, and how you wound up being in the South Dakota State Senate?
I appreciate all those questions. Let's see if I can remember all 3. Well, I grew up in San Diego, lived there majority of my life, late 60s, early 70s. So it was kind of a sex, drugs, rock and roll environment. And then I started a construction company. And then in my early 30s, some friends of mine they just invited me to go to Bible believing, Bible teaching church. And it's there where I fell in love with Jesus and forgiven of my sin. And he invited me to be part of his team, called me to the ministry, which is proof that God uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And I was ordained in a Calvary chapel. What year was that? Maybe 93 or so. And served at a large church there, Horizon Christian Fellowship in San Diego, for about 10 years. And then God does definitely have a sense of humor and takes a guy from SD, from San Diego, to SD, South Dakota and planted a Calvary church here in 2002. Didn't know anybody. I just knew that God had called me. So came here, and I hope, Jenny Beth, at some point you can come and visit this area a little bit more. You were going to meet some of the sweetest, kindest, uh, biblically literate people that you'll ever meet. And so I've always have been behind the scenes, active in the political situations in our community, always going and fighting for the rights of the people at the city council meetings, and doing my best to have influence with our mayor and police chiefs and sheriff's office, and maybe I'll talk about that in a minute. Ellsworth Air Force Base is here as well, and that got me involved in being a part of the Rapid City Police Department chaplaincy program for 21 years. Learned a lot there, and then I was approached. I was approached in 2022 to run for the Senate in District 35. There are 35 districts in all of South Dakota. So there's 35 senators. That means that there's 70 House representatives. And so the folks that had approached me, they weren't real pleased with a gal that was in there, and so even though I knew that I'd be a stronger conservative and probably a better communicator, I asked them this question because she had been voting relatively conservative. And so I said, is it going to change? Is it going to change the vote? And they said, well, no, not really. And what I told them was that, well, we don't need to have conservative Republican fighting with conservative Republican. I wish more people would take that seriously. But I said, I told them, though, if that seat ever became vacant, that I would run. And it turned out that she needed to step down. She needed to resign. So there was a vacancy in that Senate seat. And even though I knew Governor Noem at the time, she'd been in our church several times, and we're acquaintances, and went and I thought that she would select me. She didn't, and there's a reason for that. I ran as a Christian conservative, common sense constitutionalist. Is that okay? Do you want me to keep going? Or
Well, you ran as that and she did not select you. Was she not in favor of that?
Well, I think that a lot of people that are in those positions, they would prefer to have somebody who they know is always going to vote with them.
Oh, yeah.
But she knows that I'm not that way, and she knows that I can't be bullied. She knows that I'm a strong conservative. She knew I was a strong conservative, and so I don't fault her for that. But she put another guy in there, and I ran against him in 2024, and another candidate. And by God's grace, I was elected by 15 points, and now I'm running again as a state senator for District 35.
That is really good. I'm glad that you're running again, and we need constitutional conservatives who stand up for the Constitution, which sometimes means you have to vote against what the party leadership wants you to do. So thank you for being willing to do that. And just as a note, I am a PK. I'm a preacher's kid.
Look at that. Good for you.
Yeah, so I understand the life of a family of a pastor, and you really have to be called to that. So I'm thankful for you and for your whole family. So last night, the Senate voted not to add the Save America Act to the reconciliation bill to fund Customs and Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We were recently in your seat in a rally in favor of the Save America Act. Let me show a brief clip from that rally.
Only voters that the Save America Act disenfranchises are illegal aliens, fraudsters, and dead voters. So, of course, the Democrats are against it.
You can't have our consent if the people who are casting ballots are not who they say they are. All we are asking is that you make sure it's only Americans voting in American elections with proof of citizenship upon registration and voter ID, meaning we are who we say we are when we go get our ballot. That's it. Why are you opposing it?
The Democrat Party wants illegal aliens and non-citizens to vote in our elections. We are tired of our votes being diluted by fraudulent ones. We are tired of illegal aliens stealing the voices of lawful, law-abiding Americans.
84% of Americans agree only American citizens should vote in American elections. They think women are too stupid to figure out how to show paperwork to get registered to vote, yet we're smart enough to get the paperwork shown to get a real ID and a driver's license. We know how to take care of ourselves, and we want secure elections, and we're willing to show our freaking paperwork to get secure elections. We have to get this bill passed. We just have to, and I know that with your help, not letting up, continuing to keep the pressure on, we're going to be able to get the bill moved.
Senate Majority Leader Thune simply must give us the Save America Act.
Greg, you joined Scott Pressler and me at that rally. I'm going to put the latest Save America Act vote on your screen right now. Last night, during an overnight, what's called a vote-a-rama, the Senate voted 48 to 50 against an amendment to attach Save America Act elements to the latest budget reconciliation package. Senator Thune is your senator, and that makes your answer to this next question uniquely important. Since he is the senior senator from your state, based on your knowledge of South Dakota politics and what you know about Senator Thune, what do you believe his plans are to pass the Save America Act, or does he intend to do it?
Well, I can tell you this, Jenny. I wish that my senator had me on speed dial. I'd love to chat. I'd love to chat with him about it. I also realize that, this is an issue where common sense just don't seem to be all that common anymore. Like you gave the stats, over 80% of Americans, over 70% of Democrats see the wisdom. And this is as no-brainer an issue as it's futile to me why we're even having to have this discussion, because you can't have free and fair elections without having voter ID. It's a privilege. It's a sacred right. Isn't it a sacred right to be able to vote in our elections? And the way that I look at it, if you value your vote, then getting an ID isn't going to be a difficult hurdle for you to jump over. And you look at the statistics, Pew Research, that's a very reputable organization telling the country that 80%. Now let's do some math, boys and girls. 80% say yes, this is wisdom. 20% say no. Why is it this much of a problem? And to get directly to your question, Senator Thune is in a difficult situation, and personally, I don't blame him as much as I blame the Democrats. Not one, as far as I know, not one Democrat has voted in support of this bill, and the reasons why our Republican senators are not supporting it, I think that they're going to be responsible to their constituency for not supporting Senator Thune.
So what you just said, I think, is really important, Greg. And I understand the people who are upset with Republicans right now. And I am part of the group who gets very frustrated with Republicans, especially in the Senate. And then we have the fact that you just pointed out. It is a fair and legitimate fact, and we should be focusing our our ire in both places, and that is that there is not a single Democrat who has voted in favor of this. At least twice, there have been amendments offered for unanimous consent to allow voter ID to be attached to different bills or to be brought up on the floor and passed through unanimous consent in the Senate. And both times there was somebody would not allow consent. So at least one person dissented, and that means there was not unanimous consent, so the measure failed. And even people like Senator John Fetterman, who keeps saying, oh, I'm in favor of voter ID. I want there to be voter ID. It just makes sense that we have voter ID. He loves to go on Fox News and sound like he's a kind of a Pennsylvania Trump supporting-ish senator, but when push comes to shove, he doesn't actually vote the way people in Pennsylvania would like, especially when it comes to the issue of this voter ID. But it's not just Fetterman. It's the entire Democrat conference in the United States Senate. None of them are voting on it. And we have to remember that when we're getting frustrated with Republicans. There are two places for us to be upset. Greg, what message would you send to Leader Thune right now on behalf of South Dakota conservatives who want this bill, the Save America Act, passed?
Well, I think Senator Thune knows how his state would vote on this. You know that we passed SB 175, which was our own Save South Dakota Save Act, and it passed. Well, it wasn't unanimous, but it was very close. I think it was in the Senate on the floor. I think it was 28 to 6. And like I said, proof of citizenship, that's a no-brainer. If you don't want to prove your citizenship, don't expect the right to vote here. We're living in a time where, unfortunately, whether it's completely justified or not, Jenny Beth, that the electorate, that the voters are concerned about election integrity. So what we need to do is to cross every T and dot every I possible to prove to them that their vote is actually counting. Requiring a photo ID at your polling place, or requiring that you have proof of citizenship when you register, this shouldn't be difficult. This shouldn't be difficult at all. And at least South Dakotans, for the most part, voted with us on that issue. So Senator Thune, he knows where his state stands, and the legislators. It was a little looser in the House. The numbers are a little bit looser, but it was definitely the vast majority.
Greg, let's talk a bit more about that. You said it's SD 175. South Dakota
Correct.
did not wait for Washington to act on election integrity. It passed, as you just said, its own proof of citizenship to register to vote law. Tell us more about that. What prompted it, and what does it do exactly?
Well, we have some true patriots in South Dakota. There's still some of us left, and my good friend Senator John Carley proposed the bill, and we fought for it. There were some amendments to make sure that we could get it passed, but it stayed true to the original vision. And the wise thing that we attached to it, which is an emergency clause. So as soon as it went to the governor's desk, and as soon as he signed it, it went into effect. So it will be in effect for our primary elections here in 2026. I had an election integrity bill this year, fortunately, that passed. Some freshman legislators, they just kind of hang back and were kind of told to maybe just sit in your seat and live and learn for your first term. But guys like my friend Senator Carley and some of us, we just said no. We were elected by the people to represent them now. So we're going to do our best to get things like election integrity supported, and it was such a simple bill. All it was reaffirming the standards that the voting tabulators, the manufacturers, requested, and even though I had to fight it hard, we got it passed, which was just another hallelujah, praise the Lord moment.
Yeah, it is so good that you did that. What do you think that this says, not just about South Dakota, but about what other state legislators should be doing to act on behalf of the constituency in their own states when the United States Congress stalls and doesn't do what they should be doing?
Well, I think the way that our founders set up our states is that local control is always wisest. So if on a federal level, things are not moving as quickly in the direction that we see, it's, this was a mandatory issue for us. So we jumped on it and we supported it. But that goes for any legislation. We in South Dakota, we're not waiting on the feds to get their act together. We have to do it, and we have proved that we have done it. And one thing that your audience probably needs to be made aware of, even though you look on a map, we're a red state, but like almost all states, we're starting to creep. We're starting to creep purple, and even though we have a supermajority of Republicans in South Dakota, there is pretty close to the majority that, even though they have an R next to their name, they don't always vote our values. And that's why at the local levels, I'm always encouraging people, get behind the conservatives, get behind those people who have proven themselves, not by just what they say, but by their voting records, and support them. Go out and knock on doors for them. If you can afford it, give to their campaigns. Doesn't have to be a lot, but a lot of people giving 20, 40, 50, $100 will help, especially in a state like ours, where there's a lot of out-of-state money coming in against us conservatives, and even the very moderate portions of the state who would claim to be Republicans. They give money to primary us. So stand your ground and support your conservatives in your local area. I don't have to tell you that, Jenny Beth, but maybe your audience just needs somebody else saying it besides just hearing it from you.
No, absolutely. They always need to hear that. And we like that kind of feedback because we are trying to do everything we can with this podcast, not just to blow a whole bunch of hot air and say these are the problems and everything is wrong, but to help people understand what else they can do to make a difference and work to solve the problems. So I appreciate you highlighting that, Greg. Now let's shift gears a little bit away from Save America, away from Washington, D.C., and into your state more specifically. I believe, if I am correct, and I've looked this up, so I think I was as I was researching for the show, that you were a prime sponsor in the South Dakota Senate for the first in the nation anti-chemical abortion pill act. I'd like you to walk our senators through that. And also, I see that you were a sponsor on a bill to require and display the inclusion of the Ten Commandments and other documents. And since you're a pastor, I thought you might like to talk about the Ten Commandment one, but then also the one about chemical abortions. Just tell us a little bit about that and what else you have done in the South Dakota legislature that makes a difference for South Dakota.
I love people that do their homework. Well done, Jenny Beth. Yeah, that was on our docket for last session. That we wanted to have something as simple as having the Ten Commandments displayed in classrooms in our public schools. And again, it's kind of, I'm springboarding off the what I mentioned earlier about people that are having an R next to their name. They don't always vote with an R. So something as simple as encouraging our students to at least know that there is a creator, that we are responsible to him, and he's given us a book, basic instructions before leaving Earth, right? It's the Bible. And what would happen? What would happen if we actually reinforce those values that many of these students are getting in their homes? What would happen if we actually reinforce those in schools? And believe it or not, it didn't pass. It didn't pass in red state, South Dakota, whose state motto is "Under God, the people rule." That just floored. That just floored all of us.
Wow, that is. I would say it's shocking, but I suppose it's not. This is just. It is the state, I think, of the country right now, and I think part of it is that people don't actually understand our founding documents. They don't understand the history related to our founding documents, the knowledge that our founding fathers had about the Ten Commandments, about the way democracies and republics worked before America was formed, and how much of that framed what they were doing. They thought that you always had to have a moral society for our form of government to work. And when we don't acknowledge that and pay attention to it, I think that we run into a lot of the problems we're seeing today in our country.
Yeah, well, the founders, they basically said the Constitution was worthless for peoples who weren't, and they said religious, but Christians is who they were talking about with the foundations of the Judeo-Christian principles. And Jenny, you're probably as in tune with this as we are here in South Dakota, but we live in an environment that caters to the politically correct instead of the biblically correct. And so our responsibility, it's one of the reasons why me as a pastor, that's my primary calling, but we're called to be salt and light. And pastors, let me encourage the pastors out there, be involved in the political process. You don't have to be a politician yourself. And it's funny, my neighbors, were calling to me down the other 2 nights ago, and they said, "Hello, Mr. Politician." I go, I yelled back, I go, "I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant." And when we look at it from that perspective, that's what our founders, they wanted us. They expected us to do our duty. We'd go and we'd serve for, 2, 4, 6, 8 years, and then we would go back, to our businesses. But they expected the citizenry to be the ones that led the country, not these long-term 40-year politicians who have never had a job, never had to meet their own payroll, never had to deal with employees, never had to work double shifts or multiple jobs. So I agree with you, Jenny. It would be nice if we could resurrect the founders' principles and apply them once again here in our country.
Absolutely. We need to do that, and we need to do everything that we can to help educate people about them, because they sure are not learning it in K through 12 right now in our school, public schools. Okay, Greg, before I go to this last quick question for you, I don't know if you know Jason Rappert of the National Association of Christian Legislators, but if you don't, afterward, I'll make sure that we connect you to him, because I think that might be a group you'd really like to be plugged in with. He is a former state legislator from Arkansas, and he has a really good group for Christian legislators. Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, please connect me with him. And I don't know if you're up against the clock, but can I mention a couple of things about HB 1274? You talked about the mifepristone bill. Yeah,
go ahead and mention that, and then we can wrap it up.
Very good, very good. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I am just encouraging other legislators in other states to make that a priority. This was a bill that was very close to my heart. I was invited to go to the Statesman Academy in Indianapolis by the Family Policy Council last year, and they were talking about this topic, and it grieved my heart because we thought that we all had this great win when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and it is a great win, but the chemical abortion pill providers, they just stepped up their ability to be sending these pills into states. Almost every state is still allowing this to happen. So legislators out there, you can contact me. I'll give you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We'll give you our legislation. I'll give you all my talking points. I'll give you my floor speeches. So you won't have to spend a whole lot of work there, but you've got to do it. When I first went before the Senate committee on this, I told them that we shouldn't allow this, and this additional legislation can both save more lives and indict the out-of-state abortion pill providers. So I worked with our Attorney General, I worked with our governor's office, and all kinds of other groups, and we got it passed. So I encourage you to do that. Contact me. I'd be more than happy to help.
That is very good, and I will make sure that people are aware that you've got that information available, so they don't have to do their own research if they're working on similar legislation in their states. Okay, Greg, very last thing before I let you go, how can people plug in and get to know more about you and give the website even for your campaign, just so if they want to research you or donate, they can?
Oh, that would be great. Thank you for that, Jenny Beth. You can go to gregblancforsenate.com. That's gregblancforsenate.com. You'll find out that I have kept my promise. I think I mentioned earlier that I ran on the foundation of being a Christian, conservative, common sense constitutionalist with an emphasis on faith, family, and freedom. Not a complicated platform, but one that my voting record supports, and realize that it seems like the moderates, that's a nice way of saying it, it seems like they have endless pockets, and that people, you'll have Democrats that are supporting these moderate Republicans with their donations. And I'm not just asking you to support me, but to support all Christian conservatives. There's probably even 10 or so West River that could really use your support and your prayer support as well. We know that that's where the winning shot is fired. But please, again, go to gregblancforsenate.com. Scroll down to the bottom. There's a donate button if you don't mind, and any amount would be greatly appreciated. We need more signs, and also I put out some updates on my Facebook page. So Greg Blanc for Senate on my Facebook page, and you'll be able to get some more ideas on what we're doing and being caught up to date on what I think I just posted another video yesterday.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining me today, Greg.
Jenny Beth, it's been my privilege, and hope to see you soon.
Very good. Now, before we go to a very quick break, remember, we've got to take action. So right now, what I need you to do is grab your phone and dial 202-224-3121. That's the United States Senate Capitol switchboard. Call both of your senators today and tell them to pass the Save America Act and to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. You'll have to call twice because you need to call both your senators. Again, it's 202-224-3121. Tell them to pass the Save America Act. And you can go to passthesaveamericaact.com for more information. Now we're going to a very quick break. Welcome back. Carroll is commentary editor for the Washington Examiner. He previously served as communications director for Senator Mike Lee and is a graduate of the Antonin Scalia School of Law. He's going to help break down today's news. Conn, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jenny Beth.
So you can see on your screen right now what the Department of Justice alleged. 11 federal counts, more than $3 million funneled to people who were embedded with the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazi groups, all related to the Southern Poverty Law Center. We at Tea Party Patriots Action have been in their crosshairs for years. Congressman Jim Jordan posted that the Southern Poverty Law Center had raised money to fight hate, but really instead they were funding it. Conn, do you believe this indictment changes how the mainstream media reacts and treats the Southern Poverty Law Center? And what do you think the long-term ramifications of this indictment are?
It should change the way they treat them. I mean, this is, as our editorial called them today, a hate fraud factory. They were funding the Unite the Right debacle in Charlottesville, not trying to fight it. This was the same incident that ended up causing Joe Biden allegedly to run again for president. And all of this, white supremacist nonsense was basically laundered through the Southern Poverty Law Center and created by them to feed a media narrative. Now it's been exposed, and hopefully the same media entities that unquestionably just cited the Southern Poverty Law Center will note that they were funding the very hate that they were supposedly trying to dismantle.
Conn, their list was used to defund or to defame and defund conservative groups with legitimate viewpoint differences. Family Research Council, Turning Point USA, Moms for Liberty, Tea Party Patriots Action, we've all been attacked by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Once you're listed on their site as hateful, other groups work to cause advertisers and donors to stop funding you. ProPublica used the SPLC's list to match it up with online ad companies and work to stop ad revenues from going to groups listed on the SPLC site. How influential is the SPLC? And do you think that this is finally going to prove they're illegitimate? I worry because they've got $1 billion. $1 billion in endowment. That's a lot of money to do a campaign to try to whitewash this incredibly awful situation.
Yeah, well, I think President Trump has already done a lot to kind of defang them and make them less powerful. I mean, when you got rid of the USAID, I mean, this was an organization that was taking hate maps like the one produced by Southern Poverty Law Center to delist and attack sources like all the ones you mentioned, but also the Center for Immigration Studies and even the Washington Examiner, a piece I wrote that all I did was cite a poll showing that conservative women were happier than liberal women. And this was enough to get us labeled a hate site and put on a banned list from the USAID. So by defunding USAID, and then also Kash Patel at the FBI has completely gotten rid of any partnership they have with the SPLC. Under the Biden administration, the SPLC partnered with the FBI to attack Catholic families in Richmond, Virginia area. That partnership is gone. So Trump has already done so much to dismantle SPLC's power, and hopefully going forward, they will be remembered as the hate frauds that they are and not a legitimate organization.
Yeah, those are really good points. As you were talking, I had an idea. It's just an idea. I don't know if what I'm about to say is happening the way it may be, but I think that there are, well, let me just stop. I know that textbooks have used the SPLC to talk about different groups that are hate groups, and that schools around the country have as well. Maybe there's another place for the Department of Education to look and see if school systems around the country are referencing SPLC. They can no longer do that in order to get funds. But I don't know how much that is actually happening. So I'm prefacing.
No, I mean, I do think, you raise, I don't know how much the Department of Education exists anymore, but, I do think that there is a role for the Department of Education to play in making sure that you don't have a bunch of large school districts in liberal jurisdictions basically spreading lies and hate like California and New York textbooks are.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears and go to Virginia. Democrats push through a referendum that will redraw the congressional maps to overwhelmingly favor the Democrats. And people can see right now on the screen the two different maps of what it looked like before redistricting in Virginia and what it looks like now. You posted on your X a recent Washington Examiner piece by Michael Barone that says all redistricting reformers are hypocrites, and you reposted another article you posted another article from the Washington Examiner that said that James Madison saw Abigail Spanberger coming. Explain to our audience how what Democrats in Virginia did is not reform, but an actual power grab.
Sure. So those are actually kind of two separate issues there. The first one with the redistricting, it is a huge power grab from the swamp. I mean, basically, what you have is a map that takes the hugely populous and wealthy Fairfax County, which is all that USAID money I was talking about earlier goes to, and it split that county up into 5 different slices to, basically project their power onto the rest of Virginia. And so it was a complete power grab from the swamp to take over the entire Virginia delegation. A map that was a perfectly fair 6-5 map in front of Democrats is now a 10-1 map in favor of Democrats. And the way they did that is by exploiting the population center that is Fairfax. The point about James Madison and what Abigail Spanberger was separately trying to do has to do with which was called the National Vote Compact. So this would basically be an agreement between a bunch of liberal Democratic states to basically get rid of the Electoral College. Whereas if you had if you have a number of states whose total Electoral College votes is higher than 272, the number to get an elected president, then if that state votes for the loser of the presidential popular contest, then the actual votes would revert to whoever the winner was. The wrinkle on that is that since Trump actually won the popular vote in 2024, if this compact had been in effect, that would mean California, Virginia, all these blue states that have signed on to this contract would have had to give their electoral votes to Donald Trump. But this was something that the electors perfectly fought against. That's why they put the Electoral College in there. But they're kind of two separate issues. But that's the power grab that Abigail Spanberger is trying to inflict on us.
She is trying to inflict a lot on the people of Virginia. Well, and not just trying, I guess she is actually succeeding. When it goes to the referendum, it looks like it's probably going to ultimately be decided in the courts. Have you been tracking these legal challenges? And if so, what is the basis for the legal challenges? And how realistic is it that the Virginia Supreme Court may not allow this to happen?
I would say about 50-50. I mean, I think there's two basic legal reasons here. One is that the Virginia legislature exceeded the number of special sessions that they are allowed to call in order to come together and pass this resolution, which Abigail Spanberger had to sign in order to have what was a special election this past Tuesday. That's one. The other is that the Virginia Constitution requires that ballot propositions be worded accurately in a nonpartisan manner. And it's very clear from the reading of the ballot measure that Abigail Spanberger signed, it was very clearly partisan in favor of the resolution, and that it said that this map was needed to restore fairness, which, of course, if we're going from a 6-5 map to a 10-1 map, that's the exact opposite of fairness. So I think there are two grounds in which the Virginia Supreme Court could eventually overturn here, but it is going to go to Virginia Supreme Court. This is not an area where the Supreme Court itself, the National Supreme Court, will come down. This is a purely state law issue. The Virginia Supreme Court itself is not a partisan, but a small C conservative entity. So it is totally within the realm of possibility that they will act with common sense and reject this blatant illegal power grab. But they also are, somewhat humble, and they might not want to assert themselves on that level. So I think it could go either way.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. I hope they do the right thing. And I also am not holding my breath on it. So we'll see what happens. Okay, Conn, another Washington Examiner piece argues that when you read the Iran situation correctly, what you're seeing is a China strategy. I think most people are missing this angle entirely. Would you bring our audience up to speed on that? And I think that we're about to pull up that we've got the headline from that piece. What is on our screen right now?
Sure. This is a piece by our national security analyst, Tom Rogan, and it's basically parsing Trump's public both speeches and Truth Social posts to kind of analyze what are these based on. And basically what he's surmising is that Trump's larger strategy is based off of national intelligence that we're getting from spying on other agencies, tapping their communications. And what we're hearing is chatter from China and Iran, with China basically telling their client state Iran, look, you need to get on board and end this because we need the Strait of Hormuz open. And so the larger point of the article, of the piece, is that from the very beginning, this military action by Trump was less about the Iranian regime itself and more about containing China, in that we do not want China to have a forward base in the Middle East. We do not want China to be able to fund a bunch of proxy terrorist organizations that harm the United States, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis, and that this whole campaign is really a strategic, larger chess move to contain and control China, and less specifically about Iran itself.
All right, Conn, let's move on. But hold on, I want to say one thing about what you just said.
Sure.
I certainly don't hear Democrats talking about that China angle with what's going on with Iran. I've seen a little bit of chatter about it in social media. A lot of people are just completely focused only on Iran. But one of the things that I personally appreciate about what I think President Trump is trying to do, I think that I wish I could just sit down and chat with him and try to pull some of this information out of him, because right now I'm projecting and I don't know that what I'm saying is actually fact. But it just seems to me that he's looking around the entire world right now, and he has made a commitment to the American people. He's going to make America great again, put America back on the right track. And he's rolling up his sleeves and doing the hard work to get it done. And he understands it's going to take a while to get it done. It's almost like the way that he envisions a big, beautiful tower being built. And he understands that in order to do that, you've got to clear out the land, dig deep, build the foundation, and then and that part looks really ugly a lot of times. Like, there's some building happening near where my house is, and it looks horrible right now. But eventually, once everything's built, it's going to look a lot better. And I think that's part of what we're seeing right now with everything he's doing internationally. He's not doing it because he's trying to be some globalist president. He's doing it because he understands America has a place in the entire world politics and the world economy, and he's trying to make sure that we have a fair playing field, or a level playing field, and that we are safe for future generations. And I think that's a lot of what he's working on. And people, it's hard to understand all the intelligence that the president gets. He gets a lot of information that we don't see as citizens. But I don't think he's doing this for anything other than the fact that he loves our country so much. He's looking out for what's best for our country.
Yeah, I think you're right. And maybe your analogy of the construction project is better. It's going to look ugly in the beginning, but you don't really see what the final vision is going to be. I went with the chess metaphor where there's early moves going on, but there's a larger strategy going on. I think we're saying the same thing, and maybe your analogy is better. But I do think he has a vision. I think his vision is correct. You know, we really need to make sure that the next century is going to be an American century, not a Chinese century. And I think part of this, not part of it, this Iran war is all part of limiting China and setting up that American century to make sure that we do not live under a Chinese century.
Yeah, very good. And I'm glad that you guys posted about that and had that published in your paper and that we had a chance to talk about that one today. Okay, now let's move to the Save America Act, which is a legislation that we've been trying to get enacted into law for over 2 years at this point with Tea Party Patriots Action. You know Senate procedures well since you used to work there, and your former boss is leading the effort in the Senate. For weeks, we've heard from Republican senators that they've argued they cannot have a talking filibuster because there would be unlimited debate. Unlimited amendments offered by Democrats, and that they just couldn't have that. It could take way too long. But isn't that kind of unlimited amendments the exact same thing that happens with a vote-a-rama? And we just had vote-a-rama last night in the budget reconciliation, and it was over by this morning. So I don't understand why unlimited amendments are such a difficult thing for the Save America Act, but not for reconciliation. Would you explain that, and also break down what I'm talking about when I say vote-a-rama to the audience?
Sure. So the budget reconciliation is a specific procedural process as part of the 1974 Budget Act that allows the Senate to pass legislation without meeting this filibuster. So you can pass legislation with 50 votes instead of 60 votes. The limiting factor under reconciliation is that you can only have things that have a budgetary impact that are allowed to be included. So some things like the SAVE Act, the parliamentarian might say, can't be allowed within that. So there's a limited scope with which you can legislate things under reconciliation. Now, there's a lot of leeway there about how you can persuade the parliamentarian that something does have a budget impact, but that takes time, and you need a strong majority of the conference to do that. And the simple reality is that there are not, because of Tillis, Murkowski, Collins, and McConnell, there's not 50 votes in the Senate to either go through the reconciliation process or through the talking filibuster to get it through. So it's a numbers game, and that's unfortunately reality.
From your standpoint, where does the Save America Act actually stand, and is there a path to get it passed before the midterms?
I'm generally an optimistic person. Unfortunately, I just don't see a path for it. Maybe if Trump was laser-like focused on it and he was willing to put McConnell and Tillis and all these senators on the spot, maybe they could get it through. But I just don't see the concentration, the focus, the effort from the White House and from Thune to get it done.
We're going to still keep working, trying to get it attached to must-pass legislation. So we'll see what happens with that. There are not a lot more pieces of must-pass legislation between now.
Not a lot of trains leaving the station.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. And I want the audience to know we are not giving up. That's why I'm going to Arizona this weekend and Alaska next weekend to continue working on passing the Save America Act. If it doesn't wind up passing in this Congress, we'll just keep working at it. Sometimes legislating in America takes a long time to achieve your goal. So, but I'm still not completely giving up.
No, you should. And that's
now.
Absolutely true. I mean, there's so many pieces of legislation where you get up to a certain 48, then you get 49, then you get 50. And, you just build, you keep building, you keep fighting, you get that base, and you come back next time until you get it done.
Right. So, okay. Now, before we close, as I was researching for this episode of the show, I saw your piece on public sector unions making blue states ungovernable. And when I was reading it, I had no idea that FDR had stopped government employees from unionizing not once, but 2 times. And I learned that from your column. Would you explain why public sector unions are such a problem and what might be done about it?
Well, there's so many reasons why it's a huge problem, but I'll just go ahead and use FDR's, right? So FDR, when they passed the Wagner Act way back in 1935, this is the bulwark signature labor bill. The government unions wanted to be included, and FDR said no. And his reason was because of democratic accountability, in that when you have a government union negotiating with an elected official, that is where you have the people have a voice in who that elected official is. But if you allow the government to collectively bargain, and collectively bargain contracts don't just put in wages and pay. They can set policy, like staff hours or police conduct or so many other things. And so FDR understood that if you allowed for government unions, you were taking whatever power you're giving to unions through collective bargaining, you were automatically taking away from the people and democratic accountability. And that is why FDR was against unions, and it's why everyone should be against public sector unions today.
Okay, it's really interesting, and I encourage everyone to go check out that column. As we go back and put this all on social media, I'm going to ask my team to include a link for that because I just thought it was a really good piece. Conn, thank you so much for being on. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed seeing the things that you guys have posted and written about with Washington Examiner, how the commentary ties to the news. Thank you so much for being on. Maybe I would love it if you could come back on and do this again.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Anytime, Jenny Beth.
Thank you. We have 2 calls to action before I let you go today. First, call the United States Senate right now and tell them to pass the Save America Act and to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. The Capitol switchboard is 202-224-3121. That number's on your screen. It is again 202-224-3121. And you can also go to passthesaveamericaact.com for more details. You've got to call twice because you've got 2 U.S. senators, so you've got to call there 2 times. Then I need you to call a 3rd time and call and ask for your congressman. Tell your congressman not to even consider passing the so-called Dignity Act. Tell them no amnesty, not now, not ever. And again, that Capitol switchboard number, it's the exact same, 202-224-3121. Do not let them rebrand amnesty as dignity. If your congressman is on the list of co-sponsors for that so-called Dignity Act, tell them to remove their name as co-sponsor. Tell them you know this is an amnesty bill. They're not fooling you, and you do not want to see this passed. They need to hear this message from you. I am headed to Arizona pretty much as soon as I finish this show, and I'll be there on Saturday and Sunday with Scott Pressler. We'll be in Scottsdale on Saturday, and then on Sunday we will be in Tucson. If you're in Arizona, go to events.teapartypatriots.org for details to join us. And then if you're in Alaska, we hope to see you there next weekend because we're headed to Alaska next. So again, that's events.teapartypatriots.org. I'm Jenny Beth Martin, and we'll see you tomorrow. If you enjoyed today's conversation, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more people who care about liberty and the Constitution. You can find this and other episodes at jennybethshow.com, as well as Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, X, and your favorite podcast platform.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.